This year's Lifetime Achievement winners are Doctors Terry and Jan Todd, who together and individually made enormous contributions to the world of fitness and strength. They raised the public's understanding of the value of all forms of strength training through their personal lifting accomplishments, their books, numerous articles, and documentary films, as well as all they have done to preserve the history of strength sports. Dr. Terry Todd began as a tennis player, earning a college scholarship to play for UT Austin. In the summer after his high school graduation, he began training and then kept lifting in secret as he also played varsity tennis at UT. Although he was ranked number 1 on the team by the end of his freshman year, his tennis coach kept telling Terry that lifting would make him muscle-bound, and so Terry quit the team in his junior year and focused his energy on competitive weightlifting. Terry won the Junior National Olympic Weightlifting Championship in 1963 and then switched to the new sport of powerlifting, winning the first men's national championships in 1964 and the first senior nationals in 1965. Over the course of his career, he would go on to set 15 world records in powerlifting and was the first to officially squat 700 pounds and to total 1,600, 1,700, 1,800, and 1,900 pounds. Terry was also one of the first people to write about the sport of powerlifting, and his insightful, dramatic articles in the Muscle magazines and later Sports Illustrated helped powerlifting develop its unique identity as a sport. In 1978, he also wrote the sport's first book, Inside Powerlifting, and in its introduction, the great powerlifter Larry Pacifico described Terry as an immortal in powerlifting, who stands on the elite plateau reserved for legends. He has been, wrote Larry, our guiding light and inspiration since powerlifting began. After finishing his PhD in 1966 with a dissertation on the history of weight training, Terry began teaching as a university professor while continuing to work as a journalist and sports promoter. In addition to his work for Sports Illustrated, Terry served as a broadcaster for both NBC and CBS, was involved in the early days of the World's Strongest Man contest, created and promoted the Strongest Man in Football contest for CBS for 3 years, and also opened the National Strength Research Center at Auburn University. Terry married Jan in 1973 after meeting her at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. When Jan began weight training following their marriage, there were no women's powerlifting contests, no women's weightlifting contests, and no women's bodybuilding. However, she was intrigued by strength, and with coaching from Terry, decided to see if she could get in the Guinness Book of Records, as those were the only records that existed for women at that time. When Jan deadlifted 394.5 pounds in 1974 and made it into Guinness for the first time, she made that lift and the next several records that followed it only after getting permission to do exhibitions at men's meets, exhibitions that inspired other women to ask for the right to compete. She remained in the Guinness Book for the next 12 years, having set more than 60 world or American records in 5 bodyweight classes by the time she retired to begin her PhD studies. She was the first woman to total more than 1,000, 1,100, and 1,200 pounds, and her highest records set back in 1981 were 480 pounds in the deadlift, 545.5 pounds in the squat, and 1,229 pounds in the total. Often called the world's strongest woman in newspapers and magazines like Sports Illustrated and People, Jan also appeared on dozens of television shows during her lifting career, including Johnny Carson's Tonight Show.
Welcome, please, Jan Todd.
Powerlifting is a relatively new sport. There's only been men's competitions for about the last 15 years. The women's competitions are just getting started.
Jan also made significant contributions to the early development of women's powerlifting, writing the first draft of its rules, serving as head of both the American and International Women's Committees, and twice serving as national coach. She was also twice chosen as coach of the USPF men's team, making her the first woman to coach a men's team at a world championship in any strength sport. In 1978, Jan also became the first woman to lift the famous Denny Stones in Scotland, a feat no other woman would master for 40 years. In 1983, the Todds moved to Austin, Texas, where they began teaching at the University of Texas and began focusing more on encouraging academic interest on the history of the iron game. Their work has allowed the study of strongmen, weightlifting, bodybuilding, strength coaching, and other related fitness fields to become part of the academic canon for kinesiology departments and the field of sport history. They began publishing the highly influential academic journal Iron Game History, the Journal of Physical Culture, in 1990. And together they've written more than 600 articles and 7 books on strength training and/or strength history. Jan Todd, now a full professor at UT Austin, is recognized as one of the most important sports historians in the world and runs a doctoral program focusing on the history of fitness and strength training that she created. The Todd's encyclopedic knowledge of history of the iron game also led them to begin making documentary films with Rogue Fitness about early legends like Eugen Sandow and George Hackenschmidt, and longer, critically successful films like Stoneland and Fulsticker, which can now be seen on Netflix and other media platforms. Perhaps the Todd's greatest achievement, however, has been establishing the Stark Center for Physical Culture and Sports to hold their vast collection of weight training materials and to make it available to the public. Located in a 30,000 square foot facility in the UT football stadium, the center contains more than 40,000 books, nearly every muscle magazine published in the English language, thousands of photographs, rare strongman posters from the turn of the 20th century, antique dumbbells and barbells, and artifacts and personal papers from dozens of important figures in our field, such as Louis Cyr, Warren Lincoln Travis, Joe and Betty Weeder, Pudgy Stockton, Eugen Sandow, Bob Hoffman, Tommy Kono, George Jowett, Chris Dickerson, Dr. Bob Goldman, Milo Steenborn, George Hackenschmidt, and many others. And last but certainly not least, in 2002, when Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jim Lorimer asked Terry to create a strongman contest for the Arnold Sports Festival, no one could have foreseen that he would come up with ideas that would totally transform the sport. The Arnold Strongman Classic, Terry envisioned, is the best test of true strength in the world of strongmen and is widely regarded as the most important contest in the sport. Jan co-directed the event with Terry until his death this past summer, and she took over the reins this year to make sure that the show continues as a fitting legacy to Terry and his vision. We congratulate Drs. Terry and Jan Todd on the lifetime dedicated to success in the world of fitness and strength. We are proud to honor both as the Lifetime Achievement Award recipients of 2019.